What would $2,000 mean for you and your family? That's the question that has been circulating Congress for the last few weeks, with efforts from Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Josh Hawley, and some progressive members in the House. For some, it's catching up on rent, bills, and necessities. And yes, for some, $2,000 might mean purchasing material goods. But either way you look at it, $2,000 checks to the majority of the population would stimulate the economy in a positive way. So why aren't we getting it? Well, in layman terms, it simply comes down to the ideological worldview that is flawed in its nature and inconsistent in its practice. It's the ideology of free market capitalism and debt hawkishness. Most of the senators had no problem voting for the first CARES Act, which massively benefited the wealthy and profitable corporations. But now that the latest stimulus package has stripped away a lot of the corporate goodies, support for direct payments have dropped significantly. If you know how our government works with our corrupt campaign finance system, then you know that most senators only support legislation when it benefits their own career or their corporate donors. Rarely do you see overwhelming support for legislation that solely benefits the vast majority of people in this country. So when it comes down to it, lack of support for $2,000 checks is not an ideological stance, but a fight between those with and those without. On today's podcast, we're going to discuss the fight over stimulus checks and the possibility of more after Biden's inaugurated.
So we always say the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you're going to remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Our Wisconsin Revolution podcast. It's been a while since we've been on, but we've made it through 2020 and it's now 2021 and we have a lot to talk about. And joining me today is my co-host, William Walter. How you doing today, Will?
You know, I am so absolutely ecstatic to be out of 2020. It couldn't get much worse, right? So I have high expectations for 2021, only in that it can only go up from here. I hope everybody had a safe and healthy holiday season with your friends and family, distanced and masked, of course. Don't be exposing grandma and grandpa to anything here. But Happy New Year, everyone, and let's get back at it, you know?
Oh, yeah. So on top of the fact that we're going to be talking about the recent stimulus fights, we also got some really interesting news considering the youth government. And we both got elected as senators to the youth government. Do you want to talk a little bit about your position?
Sure. So I was elected in the first round of senator elections. The U.S. youth government it's similar to a lot of organizations we see in some of the other first world countries. The youth, as a demographic, are not as well represented as they should be. Let's look at the United States, where the average age of a House rep is 57 years old, the average age of a senator is 61, and the average age of the American citizen is 37. So, but this is even younger than that. This is age 28 is the max. As long as you're under that age when the election comes around, you are eligible to run for either a House rep in your state or the senator of your state. And so basically what the youth government is it's providing a organization of youth representatives elected by the youth of their state to be able to, kind of elaborate and push issues that matter to young people, why they matter to young people, and how the United States government can best assist the young people of their nation in implementing these strategies. As you know, the youth are the future, both of the government and of the economy, so it's vital for their voices to be heard and listened to if we want to be able to sustain the United States economic plan long term.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think we're both really excited to have gotten elected to the youth government. As you said, the representation for youth is definitely lacking. And for some reason, I don't think that's by accident when it comes to Congress. And when you have people like Nancy Pelosi, who's nearly in her 80s, or is she in her 80s? I'm not exactly sure, who's still in government, and Dianne Feinstein, who at this point should probably retire.
They're a bit out of a...
Oh yeah, they're a bit out of touch, and I think this definitely gives an opportunity to kind of expand the views of our political system and actually represent what we've been thinking when it comes to climate change, when it comes to the economics, and when it comes to basically all the issues that we care about. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this opportunity. I think we're going to have a little bit of a rocky road to start, but that's to be expected. But I think when we get things going, people are going to be really excited to see what we have to offer.
And we've been working with some of the youth assemblies all across the planet to find out what they have found successful, how they were able to get started originally. What are the best methods for getting your ideas and your messages across, and how can we do that in the most efficient and effective means possible? So we're going to have a lot of help from organizations who have been there, done that, and hopefully the United States, as one of the largest economies on the planet, but the only one that didn't have a organization dedicated to youth representation, hopefully we're able to do that for young people all across this country.
Most definitely, and maybe we can start talking about stimulus checks as soon as we get inaugurated. But a good segue into the topic we're talking about. So obviously the big fight that's been going on in Congress is the stimulus checks, and whether it should be $2,000, whether it should be $600, or whether it should be none at all, right? But I think we had an unlikely ally that a lot of people weren't expecting. That was Donald Trump. And he said, hey, $2,000 isn't, or $600 isn't enough. We need $2,000 checks, and we need to cut some of this meat from the stimulus proposal that really doesn't make sense. Like, there's supposed to be money going to Egypt, money going to Ukraine, money going to Israel for missile defense program or something. Stuff that doesn't even make sense, that doesn't help us at all. But you definitely had an unlikely ally, and as always, Senator Bernie Sanders jumped to that opportunity, and he was showing his tweets in the chambers of the Senate, which is quite amazing. I mean, if you look at how the Trump base works, they pretty much follow whatever he says, lock and step. So when you have a senator at the Senate floor going against Mitch McConnell showing the president's tweets, it's really pitting Donald Trump and his base against the elite Republican base. And I thought that was very interesting that Bernie Sanders brought his tweets to the Senate floor. What was your takes on Bernie Sanders' fight and having Donald Trump as an unlikely ally?
Well, if I were to be sitting here and Andre were to say, let's say hypothetically, I'm not following the news or anything that's going on. I literally live under a rock, like, say, Patrick Starr, and I'm coming out and I'm being informed of what's going on these past few weeks. You're told, oh, well, the American citizens need money. The government is reluctantly willing to give them $600 measly for 9 months of suffering. And one U.S. senator is standing up for the U.S. people and saying, hey, they need $2,000. Even if I did live under a rock, I would know that it's probably Bernie Sanders who is doing this. Lo and behold, Mr. Right Side of history, in every situation imaginable, Bernie Sanders is the one to stand up and fight for the U.S. population. I love, there's so many memes out there of Bernie Sanders playing, tug of war on one side, and then Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Mitch McConnell are on the other, and then I like the ones now that are that same meme, but instead of the last panel, all of a sudden Donald Trump is sliding in to help Bernie, and Bernie's like, wait, what? Because it's just so out of left field to think that of all the possible allies that Bernie would have been able to recruit, all of the heavy progressives that ran on these kind of populist ideas, the Elizabeth Warrens, the Kamala Harris was recently mentioned how the $2,000 stimulus was her idea, and then she doesn't want to support it. The president-elect of the United States, in a message that's incredibly beneficial towards the Democratic Party, when the Democrats are facing the arguably most important runoff election in United States history, they have this winning message, and the president-elect is nowhere to be seen. He could be out on news, on news shows, on the radio, on internet interviews. Anybody who will listen, he should be out there running, hey, the Democrats want to give you $2,000, the Republicans don't. So we need to elect Democrats. It's so free. And yet Joe Biden's not doing that. Yet Kamala Harris did not stand with Senator Sanders. Yet Elizabeth Warren did, so I will give props to her for that. But I'd still love to see, maybe her out actually, on the Senate floor with Senator Sanders doing and saying some of these kind of things. So it kind of goes back to a lot of the controlled opposition party that we talk about all the time, that here we have this perfect prime time example for the Democrats to just rub this message down the throats of Republican voters all across the country, but especially in Georgia. Hey, you will get $2,000 stimulus checks, an idea supported by 82% of the U.S. population if Democrats win the Senate. A child could do this, but the Democrats don't seem to be doing that. They said originally, Schumer said he wanted that the Democrats were backing Senator Sanders fully, and then within one day on New Year's Day they caved and accepted the Republican proposition. So it's astounding, really. It is Washington Generals to the Harlem Globetrotters 150%. It's embarrassing, and I can't understand why you can have this situation where so many American citizens so heavily support this idea, and such a wide variety of the American leadership have said they supported it. We had all those both Democratic and Republican senators, Josh Hawley, for example, who teamed with Sanders when they were trying to get the checks to be $1,200 instead of $600. Why all of these people can say they're in support of this measure, and then one senator from Kentucky can just be like, no, I don't want to bring it to a vote, and bam, it's not brought to a vote. That's so undemocratic. I can't even fathom how the American citizens put up with this.
Exactly. And I think your point right there is a microcosm of the entire Democratic Party. When you look at all the popular issues that we have on the table when it comes to legalization of marijuana, a Green New Deal, $15 minimum wage, Medicare for all, I mean, they're nowhere to be found on most of these issues. So it's not necessarily surprising that they don't support it or aren't, really out there advocating for it when it comes to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So it's actually par and par for the course for them. This is actually the Democratic way. They don't come out for popular issues, and they still have this kind of triangulation type ideological view, the Bill Clinton days that, hey, I can work with the Republicans, I can work with Democrats, I'm kind of in the middle. And that's where they kind of lay. And they think in their minds, the middle ground is no stimulus checks, right? And that makes no sense. The middle ground is stimulus checks or nothing. So, and that's really what it comes down to. And I just think, Joe Biden doesn't even think it's popular, even contrary to the actual data, which shows that it is popular. He probably doesn't even look at the polls. He's just like, hey, my elite friends say we don't need him. So we don't need him. Right. And it's not popular amongst the base. So I think that's literally what it is. It's not any base in reality, but it's something that they've convinced themselves that people want. But like you said,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I was just gonna say it's pretty much a layup in Georgia because right now, you got Jon Ossoff running ads in favor of the $2,000 stimulus checks, and pointing out that his opponent doesn't support him, and he's the reason why they got blocked in the past. So it's definitely something that Jon Ossoff thinks it would help him win. So why wouldn't Joe Biden be out there advocating for it? It's almost like he doesn't necessarily want to win the Senate. And that brings me back to what I was thinking about earlier. That didn't Joe Biden say something? I can't remember. It might have been an article or something that said he might rather prefer a Republican Senate so it can balance Congress out or something like that. It was something weird like that. So I'm starting to think he doesn't really care whether they actually win Georgia or not.
I think he would prefer not to win Georgia, and I think that there's a lot of Democrats of the establishment elite who would agree with that statement for one simple reason, and that's that it gives them an excuse to not push any of the progressive policies that they campaigned on. If the Republicans still control the Senate, Biden can just sit back and say, well, aw shucks, I can't get any of this stuff done. The Republicans won't let me. Sorry, guys. And they'll expect us to just kind of shut up and take that and accept that. and that's disgusting. It's hilarious that they can run the same playbook year after year after year after year after year, and the Blue No Matter Who crowd will just eat it up instead of demanding more from their party. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if I were to find out that they're almost kind of hoping that they don't win. With that being said, they're not going to. Well, see, I shouldn't say that. From what I've heard, the boots on the ground work being done by the Democrats in Florida is basically non-existent. They're pouring tons and tons of money into television and radio ads and whatnot, but in terms of like on the ground messaging, front door knocking, and that kind of stuff. Granted, we are in the middle of a pandemic, but the Republicans are still doing it safely and effectively, from what organizers I know in Georgia have been saying. And the Democrats just have no ground game whatsoever. So maybe they are just kind of tossing it into the wind and saying like, well, yeah, if we win, great, but if we don't, it's not that big a deal, because then we can just blame the boogeyman of the Republicans and not actually have to do anything that we said we would do. And it's completely hilarious that's the controlled opposition statement in this situation, but I've come to expect it at this point. Professional losers,
Pretty much. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's like they've kind of narrowed it down to a science on how to lose, things that should be a layup. But let's talk about some of the things that are in this in this stimulus package. So obviously, the Democrats did eventually pass the $2,000 up in the House. But it actually took a lot of pressure from Donald Trump and obviously Bernie Sanders and the left-wing progressives in the House for them to actually kind of get something going. So, yeah, they passed it, but they should have came to the table with that. So it ultimately became $600, and that's what Donald Trump signed off on. But here's just some of the things that are actually in here. So there's funding for broadband infrastructure, $7 billion. That's actually pretty good. Obviously, the $600 individual checks, $300 employment. To actually talk about that, it actually went from $600 to $300 on unemployment. So it actually decreased. So that's not necessarily a good thing right there. $82 billion for education. Which isn't bad, but if you read the articles about education and what they actually need, it actually falls very short of what they actually need. So it could be better. $285 billion for smaller businesses, only available to borrowers that employs less than 300 employees, which is good. But the problem with that is I've heard kind of horror stories with small businesses applying for the PPP loan and they actually didn't get it. So
yeah, because the bigger companies and the friends of the people who are making the decisions come swooping in, just like they did with the first PPP loan.
Exactly. So it could be kind of like a bait and switch, like, hey, this is for small businesses, and then they do these weird LLC tricks or whatever. You know how corporate works. They always find a loophole. And then they get all the money, and then there's nothing left for the rest of the smaller businesses. So good on the face value in the application. Who knows? We'll find out. There's funding for vaccines and nursing homes, help for childcare providers, $10 billion. That's pretty good. A ban on surprise medical bills. We got tax breaks. Oh, okay. Yeah, tax breaks for corporate meal expenses. That's what we were talking about earlier. Like, come on, who do these corporate guys really need?
That's the famous 3 martini lunch deduction.
Exactly, 3 martini. That's actually a good name for it. This one right here is a very weird one. Churches and faith-based orgs can apply for PPP loans. So those are nonprofit and they don't pay taxes. So I'm
That's
like
disgusting.
A little iffy
Joel
on that
Osteen, the mega church pastor down in Florida, the man with a $4 million home. Excuse me, I believe it's like a $15 million home, and he owns multiple Ferraris, but he received $4 million from the PPP loan. That's
wow.
Absolutely absurd. Google his house and tell me that this man needs PPP assistance. And then keep in mind, this is the same man who refused to open his doors to the people that were suffering in the flooding of Houston. a couple years ago because he didn't want to ruin the carpets of his church. That's very Christian of you, Joel. Thank you for helping the needy and protecting your carpets, you jerk.
Yeah, that should work out very well when he's trying to get into heaven. But that's another discussion. There's also $2 billion for the Space Force. Yeah, that's really
Space
necessary
Force,
right
Guardians.
now. Exactly. We got to be the guardians of the galaxy. America and the world is not enough for us. We have to guard it.
Exactly. It's not enough to police the entire planet. Now we need to start policing the solar system too.
Exactly. Looks like there's tax breaks for horse owners. Yeah, that's fun. Not horse owners. Sorry, horse race owners.
Yeah,
really
I
important
believe
to
that
put
was
that in there.
specifically implemented by Mitch McConnell. As we know, Kentucky
Obviously,
is famous
Kentucky
for its
Derby, yeah.
importance, for how important horse racing is there to their economy and in terms of local entertainment, what we do and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, if there's a better quote unquote politician in terms of being good at being a politician, Mitch McConnell is the best. He's such a despicable, greedy, remorseless, turtle man. But
he's
so
smart
good at
though.
being evil.
He's just extremely smart. Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, if we had a competent leader on the Democratic side in either chamber, I think the Democrats would get a lot farther, but they're completely horrible. I'm sorry. But yeah, there's also there's nearly this is the one that really pissed me off. So Congress doubled their healthcare budget, which it's funny because they're denying everyone else healthcare, and they're hey, we got to get that premium stuff during a pandemic, and then this is the same place that prescribes multiple members of Congress their Alzheimer's medication.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
and they get all their vaccines immediately. And I understand that's because there is a law that is conceptually it makes sense. If some kind of, let's say, pandemic that was literally killing off everyone that got sick or whatever, it would be hard for the government to function if all of the elected officials were killed. So yes, that part of it makes sense. But in a pandemic like this, where so many of these congressional reps who have already been vaccinated were downplaying the importance of it, or saying it's a hoax, or saying, whatever it may have been, not taking it serious and telling other people not to take it serious, and then they still get to swoop into the front of the line for the vaccine. It's comic book level villain. It's just so absolutely disgusting, but a perfect microcosm of what America represents.
Exactly. It's just the decline of the state at this point. Speaking of state, what's not in the stimulus package bill is there is no state and local aid, which is horrifying because if you've been keeping up on state budgets and all that, they're having to make huge cuts to their annual budgets because there's just budget shortfalls. People are losing their jobs. There's no annual revenue coming into the government. So the fact that there's no state and local government aid is horrendous. I mean, and if you remember back to the initial CARES Act, Nancy Pelosi kind of snapped out on Jake Tapper because he was asking her about why there isn't state and local aid, and she was like, "Just calm down. There's going to be state and local aid. Watch, you'll see." And now, 9-10 months later, until the next year, there's still no state and local aid. So she completely got played when it came to that. She basically
did she do exactly what the corporate masters wanted her to do?
Oh, you got a point there. I mean, maybe she never really wanted state and local aid. She was just saying that in her media present day. So
that video of Pelosi earlier this year where she's getting interviewed and then she just kind of stops and goes Sunday, good morning, happy Sunday, or whatever. That video lives in my head rent free. That's oh my god. That's such a robot getting reset type of behavior. It was just so off-putting.
Breaking news: is Nancy Pelosi a robot? We'll talk about this later at 10 o'clock. I mean, honestly, that I know a lot of people didn't take that very serious, but I think I took it a little bit more serious because I felt I don't know, maybe Nancy Pelosi has some mental problems going on, or some some decline going on with her brain.
Yeah.
Because that just doesn't happen.
So it was just weird. Like, it definitely could have been that she just misheard what was said, or somebody else in the background had said something and she thought that was what the interviewer was asking. But, like, it just was so creepy. Something about it just wasn't right. And I think about that video, like, all the time now. And when I hear people like, "Yas, Queen,"
it's almost like it's almost like one of those AI programs that didn't understand your question and they just kind of revert back to the initial programming.
Exactly. It's got like the generic statement that it's supposed to start out with, and if it doesn't register what was said, it just goes back to that statement and tries to like start again from there because it has to follow the code exactly as it's written.
Exactly. So here's the question. Well, obviously, this all depends on let's talk about both scenarios, whether the Democrats win the Senate, whether or not they don't. We do know that if they lose, there's almost no chance of another stimulus checks. But if they win, will Biden fight to get us another round of stimulus checks? And obviously, we won't know what level of stimulus checks they'll be trying to ask for, but will Biden fight for it?
I feel like he has to. So much of what he campaigned on and so much of what the Democratic establishment messaging has been is that, we're better than the Republicans because we care about the people and we will protect you and we will provide for you during this global pandemic. Again, that kind of goes back to one of the reasons before why I think that it wouldn't be the end of the world for Joe Biden if the Republicans win back the Senate. It gives him an easy out that he doesn't have to worry about any of these issues. He doesn't have to worry about whether or not he wants to pass another stimulus thing, whatever. I mean, we've already seen him completely go back on his word about college debt. So maybe he is just so comfortable with lying over the course of his career that he just wouldn't give a damn and would just be willing to completely go back on everything that he had promised. But I can't see that being, in the age of the internet where everything is recorded and everything is remembered. I feel like it's a little bit different than blatantly lying on some kind of campaign promise or whatever it might have been when he ran in the late 80s and whatnot. And even then he got caught for plagiarizing and kind of embellishing a lot of the information that he was stating. So yes, he has already gone back on the college debt. He has shown that he's willing to do that. I just can't see it with stimulus assistance when the entire party's messaging has revolved around that, not just him saying it. But again, he has said, yes, I support the $2,000 checks once, and that was when he was walking away from an interview and the question was yelled at him, and he just kind of said yes and then turned around and left. He should be front and center everywhere and anywhere someone will talk to him, just blowing it out through every airwave that the Democrats will give you $2,000. We will give you money. We have to win the Senate. Help us win the Senate. It is so insanely free that I can't think of any other reason besides they don't want to win the Senate for Biden and Harris to be out doing this. And obviously Harris still voted, was one of the Democratic senators who sided with McConnell over Bernie Sanders. So it's just kind of another peg in their corporate wig, if you will, that they're just going to do and say whatever they have to in front of the camera to win votes, and then behind the scenes they're just going to do exactly what their masters tell them to.
Exactly. And if you guys don't know what Will is talking about when Kamala voted with Mitch McConnell, he's talking about the NDAA defense provision. And basically what Bernie Sanders was trying to do is he was trying to block unanimous consent on this, on the NDAA defense bill, in order to get a vote on the $2,000 stimulus checks. And a number of Democrats voted with Mitch McConnell in order to pass the NDAA.
More Democrats voted with Mitch McConnell than Republicans who voted with, than Democrats who voted with Bernie Sanders.
Exactly, and that's also a huge problem with the Democratic Party. They're extremely willing to buck the will of the people in favor of endless militarism. So they're definitely in the pockets of the military-industrial complex, just like the rest of the Republican Party. But I think that would have been super important if, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden was coming out in favor of the $2,000 checks, because you wouldn't have had maybe those same votes go in those directions, because if they do that, then they're bucking the president-elect and making him look bad. But now, it's just like they're not really stepping on anybody's toes except for Bernie Sanders, and they don't care about Bernie Sanders.
What they do to Bernie Sanders. Yeah, he's just a punching bag for them at this point.
Exactly, but Bernie Sanders is basically, the American people solidified in Congress. It's like
he's the
punching bag. He's the people. He's the punching bag, and the rest of the elites are up there like, oh man, we hate this piece of shit, and they're really just talking about us because he actually represents us.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, even if Biden and Harris didn't come out and vociferously defend the necessity for $2,000 stimulus checks, which again is a no-brainer, they at the bare minimum should be in Georgia at least saying that they support that, like, even if they don't support it, if you want to win the Senate, it would be so easy to just go pound this message down in Georgia, a state that, obviously people all across the country need the stimulus money, but Georgia in particular, with recently voting for Joe Biden instead of Donald Trump, kind of bucking the Republican control of the Deep South. These are winnable elections for the Democratic Party, and they have this message that wins with 82% of the voting base, and instead of pounding it down every Georgia voter's throat, that the Democrats will give you this popular, want to push this popular agenda piece. The Republicans want to keep it from you. Instead, I don't even know what Biden and Harris are doing. I haven't heard or seen anything from them in weeks. So it does lead me to believe that they are just trying to lose this. They have such an easy path to be down there helping these Democratic candidates that I can't understand why they're not.
Well, honestly, I think it really comes down to Joe Biden's uncertainty, because I honestly don't think he has any faith that those candidates will actually win Georgia. So, in my opinion, this is all speculation, obviously, Joe Biden doesn't think they're going to win, so he's trying to like curry favor with Mitch McConnell and be like, hey, I didn't actively work against you guys in your majority leadership, so can we work together? That's what I think Joe Biden is doing. And he thinks for some reason, hey, if I play nice with Mitch McConnell, then he won't obstruct me my whole administration like he did Obama.
Right.
And I think that's literally what he thinks, and I think it's complete bullshit.
I mean, the Democrats just never learn. McConnell is never going to work with them. He is going to obstruct everything and anything that they try to push, as he has done in the past, and as he will continue to do, and as he said he was going to do. Why Joe Biden thinks that he is going to be somehow different than any other situation where McConnell has done this, just every opportunity presented to him, it's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, I don't know. The guy is just living in another reality, and for some reason he thinks that he is the one to bring the Republican Party back into the light, and it just doesn't make sense. That the party that he used to know is completely gone, and I think he's setting his own self up for failure, and ultimately the Democratic Party for failure, because when they see that, Joe Biden isn't fighting for anyone when he gets into office and just kind of laying his arms down for the Republican Party for the next 4 years, what incentives does anybody have to get out to vote for a Democratic president next cycle around, I don't know, man.
That's why they're prepping Kamala, so they can say, well, Joe was a little too old. He just didn't have the fight left in him, but Kamala will do it. It's just like, dude, shut up. Yeah, the woman who was in 5th place in her own state and didn't win a single delegate is somehow going to be the one that is the new people's champion. Get out of here, dude.
Couldn't even make it to Iowa, and she was polling less than Andrew Yang in her own state. Yeah, that's our next champion. You guys,
It's Hillary 2.0. It's the chosen one from the establishment. They have deemed her to be the one that will be the first woman president, and we will do whatever we can to make that come to fruition. I mean, that's why most of her senior staff was literally taken from Hillary's senior staff. They're just running the same exact playbook year after year after year, and they seem to think that this is the year that it's going to work, because the other option is actually doing something to help the people. And once you show the people once that you're capable of helping them, it's like, you ever read that book when you were a child about if you give a mouse a cookie? The American people are the mouse. So they know that once they give us just a little tidbit of something, the people are going to realize, oh, we don't need to keep settling for crumbs. Like, we can, this is our money, this is our country and our economy. We can demand what we want, and if we don't get it, we can take it. And once the people realize that, the oligarchy's control over everything in society is gone. So they know that the absolute worst thing they could possibly do is give us just a little taste of the good stuff, because then we're going to demand equality, and for the rich and wealthy controlling elite, that's just not feasible.
You got a definite point there, but overall, yes, Mitch McConnell is the political Grim Reaper. We know this. But the point here is to say that Democrats definitely had leverage to get us to the $2,000 mark. And Bernie Sanders was showing that, because if there's nothing else the Republicans care about more, it's about defense spending and military and all this stuff. And we had an opportunity to, at least leverage a vote, even if it would have died on the Senate. I personally think it would have passed just because Donald Trump supported it. And you don't really want to buck him, especially in those states that they love Donald Trump. But overall, yeah, I feel Democrats definitely could have did more. They could have fought harder. Joe Biden could have been a lot more vocal about it. And I think ultimately not taking a firm stance on this in the Senate is really going to hurt the Democrats in Georgia. So if they do lose, I think it's a lot of their own fault. But that's my take on the overall stimulus fight. I think Bernie Sanders did a great job fighting for everybody. But I can't say that for everyone. I'm looking at you, Amy Klobuchar. But I think Democrats definitely could have definitely did a much better job fighting for $2,000 stimulus checks.
Mm-hmm. It's our money. That's the thing. You pay your taxes year after year after year, and we're only going to be getting, you only get $600 back from our own tax dollars for an entire year. Well, I guess $1,200 for the first time, plus the $600 this time, so $1,800 returned to you. Let's see how many people pay more than $1,800 in taxes. I would wager it's going to be quite a bit. But then when you see the ultra rich, if we were ever able to see their financial dealings, they would be the ones that are benefiting from this. When you pass, the earlier $1 trillion stimulus, you pass another $900 billion now. If you divide that out exactly by the American population, we should each be receiving about $20,000. But because we're only receiving we'll only be receiving $1,800 over the course of the year. What happened to that other $18,000? Going right back into the pockets of the rich. One of the greatest wealth transfers of the modern era, right in front of our face, and nobody is calling it out.
Exactly. And I think that pretty much wraps our show up. So thank you guys for joining us. If you're just joining, please go and like the video. Please subscribe to our channel. We really want to grow this channel, and we're going to be having a lot of updates, especially with our youth government work and also our Wisconsin Revolution. We have a lot of work going on. So I hope you guys had a good New Year's Day, and we're looking forward to expanding this channel. So
have a good one, everybody.
So we always say the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you're going to know I said with the last words on my lips that I am